I'm Stephanie Olson, and this is my art classroom where I teach at Bloomfield Hills School at Lone Pine Elementary School in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Today, I'm going to be interviewed by Denise Brandt, our Lone Pine Media Specialist, about the TAB Art Program. TAB stands for Teaching for Artistic Behavior.
So Stephanie, tell me a little bit about what the TAB program is.
So TAB stands for Teaching for Artistic Behavior, and it's a nationally recognized program that started in Massachusetts. It's a program that really regards the student as the artist, and it kind of changes the structure of the art program to be about the student's choices and really focusing on creativity instead of technical art skills.
Tell me a little bit about the art that you are seeing produced by students now that they're into this TAB program.
So in the art studio, again, I think with the traditional DBAE discipline-based art education model, students were really focused on the product. And everything that they did, they felt like they had to do it perfect, and they felt like they had to really, this was their done one time, one chance kind of project. They only come to art twice a week. This is it. Where I think in the TAB studio, you open up the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. They are doing things like skill builders. They're exploring materials. They're practicing a new skill, just kind of playing with paint or trying something new that they've never tried before. Do you want to see this part, or do you want to try like smushing it together? What do you think?
Smushing together.
And then from there, any ideas on how you can make it square?
I think I want to make a circle, his head.
You want the head to be a circle? Okay. And then how are you going to make the body?
The body, I'm going to take this part.
Okay.
And I'm going to cut this part off.
Okay.
Then I'm going to squish it. And I'm going to take it off. Then I'm going to do a paint part.
There's 4 or 5 different types of artwork. There might be a material exploration, where they're just trying paint for the first time, trying out the clay. It might look more like they're playing, but they're like just experiencing that material. A make and take, where they're making something that, maybe it's something really important to them at that time. It's their mom's birthday. They want to make them a card, make something that day. A wow piece, where you can tell they're like so excited, and that's more, they worked on it for 7 or 8 art classes. They're really excited about that piece, and it's something that's really special to them. So more of a range, where in the past it was one very specific product, where now they're working like a professional artist, where they're kind of going through all of the creative process.
My plan would be I would put the unicorn inside of the ring of flowers, and then put the rainbow behind it, so it looked like the unicorn is standing in front of the rainbow.
Now, and what kind of material were you thinking to make the unicorn?
Clay.
So she's thinking this is going to turn into a 3-dimensional piece, and this is where the unicorn is going to live.
What was your aha moment that really convinced you to start using the TAB program at Lone Pine?
So there were a couple different things that really changed my perspective in my teaching. The first is my son Kai. He is in 1st grade this year, and when he started making art a couple years ago, we set up a studio in our house, and I just kind of watched him make art, and he would come up with these ideas, and he would be so excited about this art that he was making. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting that I'm not doing any. Like, I kind of stepped back and let him create his art projects. And then I started looking at my teaching, and I thought, well, why am I not doing this with my students? I'm letting him have creative control over the whole process, but with them, I'm directing and I'm giving them so much more instruction. So I thought, how can I adapt and change what I'm doing in the classroom to him? And then when I started looking more at what I was doing in the classroom, I'd have these questions where kids would come up and say, Mrs. Olson, am I done yet? Mrs. Olson, is this good enough? And I started to look at the process. They're asking about my artwork. They're not asking about their artwork. So how can I make this more about them, make this more student-centered, and make it more about their art versus my projects? So We started having more conversations at the K-12 level with the other art teachers, and some of the high school started noticing that their students, when they got to the high school level, they were struggling with idea generation and they were struggling with creativity. So we looked, okay, well, what are we doing to support that? How are we encouraging creativity with our younger students? So after kind of all of those pieces kind of came together, and that's where I started doing more research and looking in where I found TAB.
Can you tell me a little bit about how your classroom is structured now that you are doing TAB?
Prior to TAB, it was kind of a traditional classroom setup. I had, the students it was more like a U shape, and the students would be focused on my demonstrations and focused on me. And then after kind of the transition is I kind of revamped where we turned it into more of a studio and more of a working studio that was set up for students and set up for their independence. Starting with materials, organizing the materials into different mini studios. So we have, at Lone Pine, we have a painting studio, a drawing studio, a digital art studio, a ceramic studio, printmaking, a collage studio, an architecture studio, and then a sculpture studio. So kind of referring to the students as this is your space to work as an artist versus this is my classroom, you're here to learn from me. And within that space, how can I make this the best for them so that they can find their materials, that they can access everything, they can clean up, and they understand where they're working in their own personal studio with the understanding that it's shared in the classroom.
Stephanie, how do you make sure that the students are learning what they need to learn based on the state art curriculum and the Bloomfield curriculum? Tell me about that.
So I think that was one of my big hesitations with the TAB, is I think that one of the misconceptions of TAB is people think that it's like a free-for-all and they get to do whatever they want whenever they want. So the way we started opening up in the studio was we start with one studio at a time, and we start with the drawing studio. And when we open up that studio, that technical skill or that standard from the Bloomfield Hills curriculum, we start with teaching those skills. But then when the student chooses and how they want to apply that skill is where that learning happens. So let's say if it's a drawing standard and they're talking about a very specific skill, I teach mini lessons at the beginning of the class, and then the students are still getting that curriculum and then having the choice when they work on their individual projects after. So the ebony pencil, I'm going to just kind of sharpen it just a little bit because it's pretty flat. I'm going to just kind of try it out a little bit on here. And then I'm going to try the regular pencil. I'm going to try that charcoal pencil. What do you guys notice about these?
The different shirts.
What do you notice?
They're all different colors.
Tell me about what you mean by all different colors.
Down here you can only see white, then down here you can see gray, and some down here you can only see black.
So it almost looks like black, gray, and a lighter, like a real light silver almost. And I think you kind of figured out they get darker. Now, when we talk about color, usually we talk about like red, orange, yellow, and rainbow colors. What she's describing is the value. This is much darker than this, even though no matter how hard I push with the pencil, I can't get it any darker.
What do you not miss from teaching from the discipline-based art education program that you were teaching?
So in the past, I felt like it was so hard to differentiate. You had kids at so many different levels, and I really struggled with that, and I struggled with figuring out how to meet their needs. And everybody comes in with very different variety of art skills. Some kids who have been painting since they're 2, some kids who have never held a paintbrush. Where I think the TAB philosophy meets the child at where they are and then takes them to the next level. So that was probably one thing that I really don't miss, is trying to get everybody to the same spot when they don't need to be at the same spot. They're all at different spots. And then am I done yet? Am I done yet? Or, people finishing at different times, those early finishers, and struggling, like, do we start the next project? Do we not? And that really big, heavy focus on the product, where now we're really focusing on the process of what they're creating. Okay?
And me and Izzy came up with the eyes by making circles and then putting little pieces of clay in the middle, so it will look like the eyes of a fish.
Okay.
And we put like little lines on the tail so it would look like a real tail, and then we stuck it on. And the scales we did with one of those like popsicle sticks, and then.
And this is called texture. When you know how it looks like real scales on there, looks like texture. So great job, ladies.
What did you need to do to transition your classroom from the typical classroom now into this new tab studio process?
So a lot of research in the beginning, and I started observing other classrooms, doing a lot of reading about the teaching philosophy of tab and just teaching creativity. And then the next step was really changing the classroom environment into the different studios, kind of organizing, making it with always thinking of the students, like, how is this going to be accessible? How is this going to be the easiest for them to find what they need? Labeling things, putting pictures on things for kindergarten students, ESL students, so that they can see and find the pieces. But then also kind of structuring my lessons where I start giving them more choices but not overwhelming them. So if I'm like, you're coming from a classroom where you had limited choice to, okay, here's a little bit more, here's a little bit more, and kind of scaffolding it so that they're not overwhelmed. And it doesn't feel like they have so much that they have to come up with. So we started slow. We started slow with, maybe just doing a ceramic project together, and then they had choice over what that ceramic project is, instead of you have complete, utter freedom in the whole studio and you can go to any studio you want to, kind of thing.
What has been the greatest surprise to you once you switched over to the tab program?
I hoped that student motivation would increase. I don't think I knew how much. So I was really surprised that the independence that they were able to have, that was something that I was worried about. I was real worried if you have a kindergartner who's never held a paintbrush before, now I'm asking them to have complete control over their creative process, how that would work out. But their motivation, they're so excited about their projects, where in the past, I thought that they were excited, I thought they were motivated, but then now seeing, when you have third grade boys that want to skip recess because they're so excited and they can't wait to come in and work on their project because it's about them and it's about who they are. Then I'm learning so much more. As a specialist, I felt like it was so hard. You see 400 kids a week, and in that time, how can I develop those relationships? That's why I went into teaching, but I felt like it was almost like I see so many kids so fast, I didn't know how to make a true authentic relationship with them. So now when I sit down and I have these conversations with kids about their art, not only am I learning how they work as an artist, I'm learning things like, do they like to get messy, do they not? But I'm also learning what are they interested in, what's important to them. The personal stories that come out in their artwork are amazing. You're seeing who they are, and I'm able to connect with them on a real level instead of a superficial, okay, we're going to do this project now together, where I didn't allow for that opportunity to happen.
Stephanie, what's been your best professional experience through this whole process?
After switching to tab, I felt like my teaching changed. I got back to why I wanted to go into teaching. I wanted to make relationships with students. I wanted to be able to teach creativity and teach the process. And I felt like when I was teaching from more of a traditional DBAE or discipline-based art education model, I was getting away from that. And I felt like I wasn't teaching them how to be artists, and I wasn't teaching creativity. I was teaching a lot of just skills. And now it's so much more exciting because you never know what they're going to make and what they're going to come up with, and you're seeing the creativity.